Got anything?
Yeah, brought another map for you guys to look at. So, this is our issue currently, this is paintbrush.
Right.
Currently, this is package. So, these are sold, so we're gonna have to run into the same issue with trying to change. We initially tried to change package. There's a landowner there that doesn't want to change. So we're gonna have the same issue down here. So, we're trying to figure out the best solution, but not the greatest situation.
Have these already been given, building permits?
Those ones at
I don't
28.
think there's been any building permits issued on
Because that's generally when the addresses are given.
Yeah, but since they own, won't they still have to say they're okay with changing the name?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Because they're not set up there, they're not receiving mail. You know, we dealt with this type of an issue, and we're trying to avoid it. One reason is for emergency response, they have had a work around up there. But when you have a street coming up and then continuing on the other side of the street, the example was Rolandet in Park, Fifth West, and it was causing a nightmare for 911. Because the city had named it Rolandet, and we had always gone to the Fifth West. We're just trying to avoid something like that. We had another issue on John Adams out there where we had to change some addresses for continuity through there because the same type of issue. And there were 4 or 5 people that had already built there. You know, we had to change that just for that reason. What we were looking at as a solution here to avoid the impact. This would be a more, even though there's one person, a more significant impact to them to have to change everything than it would when they have not been given an address yet. Some of this probably, you know, would have been a little more clear had there been a master plan for us to review. That's,
I guess, so we talked to EMS and they had no issue with it.
that's because they've done a workaround, but it's so confusing to go up in any subdivision when you turn one way and it's one street, you turn the other way, it's the other street. Because this one is going to continue on.
No, that, all it covers is one house, correct? Backbridge just covers one house. So it's not continuing.
But there's 3 other lots, right?
Well, I guess currently it's on one house.
Right.
Yeah, so we tried to propose to make it a change at an intersection, so it's not just
Right.
ending at one house.
Okay, but does this road continue on to another phase?
It doesn't,
Is it going to?
there's no plans of it heading north,
or
Packbridge.
Patch Bridge to head north.
Yeah,
It can't.
Can't go.
It dead ends at Middle Fork there.
I don't know. I think we need to come to some resolution that keeps it one day.
What are you proposing then?
well, we tried to come up with something that fixed not the great situation, like I said, it's at an intersection. And so that's what we'd like to do, just like we show it there.
Generally, and I think one of the thoughts was to, I mean, you've got some lots sold here, but isn't this kind of a preliminary plat
It's in the final stages.
in the final stages to offset that? So you've got an
Yeah,
offset.
with the terrain up there, there's where that road's at, is where that road has to be. And is an offset road really the best situation either?
With that information and knowing that this will forever dead end, that may not be such a bad,
Just to have the one change.
just go ahead and have that a separate road name. Shane, what's your thoughts?
I agree with you. To leave that one Pack Bridge and continue the other way. Because we've also discussed with the EMS as well, and they didn't say that would be a problem at all. So we have discussed it with them.
It's not a problem because they use the GPS coordinates because of our mapping issues that we've had.
Yeah, he said that they're using the addressing for it, not a lane mile kind of a scenario. So he said that it wouldn't be a problem with their system. So,
Is that got a cul-de-sac turnaround back there?
No.
Why not, if it's a dead end?
Well, it's a
well,
temporary. So.
It has a
Middle
temporary.
Fork's right here, and Packard just ties in the middle fork.
Okay, so that is going to connect through.
it's gonna,
It's not a dead end.
On the other side's platted, isn't it?
I guess, I assumed that I knew where you were looking at, but I don't know. Just,
Yeah.
what you're showing me.
That makes a lot of difference if that's a dead end or not. If it's not a dead end, continue on.
Well, it ties in the middle fork.
Right here, it ties into Middle Fork, and so it comes to a T. I said dead end, I misspoke, it comes to a T there. It stops.
Yes, because that goes through to somebody coming up Middle Fork and is trying to find this and turns onto this street. I don't know if you've ever done Google Maps or Ask Siri or something, you know, people just can't find it that way.
That makes it a little harder.
You know, so, I mean, it's an issue of the impact. You know, I know this guy objects, but is there gonna be any lots before that ties in there?
It's already tied, so this is the section of built. There's one house on Pack Ridge, and then you got a T.
There's one here that faces Pack Ridge. This other one, I think, is addressed on Middle Fork.
So nobody's built on these yet? So you're talking the one
One house.
that you sold that was addressed on that, and they already have an address. Okay, and that's what I was kind of referring to, is, you know, the degree of disruption. Is it kind of a preference of, are you gonna disrupt this one person, or would it be easier to just assign those other addresses?
And I have spoken to both of these guys, and one on the east side, there's no problem, and one on the west side has an issue.
The problem came, I think, not having this master plan, and this whole area was named different than this area, and not being able to, you know, I know that's been an issue, you know, like with planning and zoning and Old Bridge, is getting that master plan to avoid this type of situation.
Oh, that's hard, because we didn't have that master plan in place yet.
I know, that was my point.
It's hard if that road goes through and then connects there. If you can't offset it, it seems like we've got to be Pack Ridge all the way, from Pack Ridge, so it is all the way through.
Pack Ridge is what this is, or what this is?
That's what this is, where it's already been addressed.
So
Has there been anything addressed on those? Then it looks to me like you need to be Pack Ridge all the way through.
I don't know.
And so what do we have left to do to do? What do we get? 31?
It's 31, yeah. So, well, yeah, that's what we're first.
And so my real hang up is with these lots that have been sold here. There's nothing left to do, it's just change it.
Just to change the
Yeah.
name on the
They show an
application.
address.
You don't have to have a signature on any of that.
You don't have to have their signatures.
That's the process that they came in on the request for name change. You know, if there were already residents there, we would have had, you know, got their input on it too, but, you know, where you haven't sold those,
Well, they are sold, that's not a problem. They
or
are
you
sold.
haven't addressed those.
And I don't know if they have, I don't know if there's been any building permit requests. I don't know.
We would not have issued a building permit on the lots that haven't gone through the final plat.
Right.
Been
There is-
affected by
They
public
are
works.
final.
I know there's a few lots that have been sold, but they were incorporated with the preliminary plat.
Yeah,
We
these
still have to
ones,
sign off when we have the final.
these ones are all final.
Which one?
So this is Division 30, 28.
So that one's.
But
Those have all been
Those are
final.
done, okay.
yeah, but still, that can be handled on the building permit process to give them the address.
They'll have to get one anyways, we send
Yeah,
a sheet with every single one.
They haven't been addressed yet.
I don't know about those specific lots, I don't know if we have stuff that's been issued.
Okay, they've been addressed.
I don't know,
He's the-
temporary, but
But the temporaries, the reason for the temporaries,
So how do we handle that name change? What's that?
process is,
sorry,
What's the process for the notification for that name change? Then what do we do
if you wanna go with it to be Pack Bridge,
if that's the direction? we go?
if you wanna go with it to be Pack Bridge, really, we would just do the same process it was gonna be to do it to Paintbrush Road rather than Paintbrush Ridge Road. Other than we'd have to give notice to any of those that are sold along there.
And I guess that.
Or they would have to sign a petition.
So that's,
And that's
That's-
where my
that's
question
what
is, what if they say they don't want to? I guess we could come across that when that happens.
Well, then that's when we get to exercise our governmental right and we force them and tell them that it's gonna be this.
And that's how we would build.
Because of that, I mean, this kind of gives it a choice, but really, at the end of the day, you know, we want to be working with you
I'm
on
not
it.
sure when I built a house that I worried about what the street was called,
Yeah,
you know, before I built it,
I'm sure that
you know.
there's a lot of different people out there
that do,
that do, yeah.
but not only that, contracts have been written using that name. So, you know, we've got 16 contracts referring to Paintbrush Road.
But you're changing it, you changed it from Paintbrush Ridge Road
Well, Paintbrush Ridge Road.
to Paintbrush, so you're changing it
We were
anyway.
gonna try and change that.
So if you're changing it anyway, just change it to
yeah.
Pack Ridge.
That's kind of, I agree, that's probably where I would lean, you know, if that's the direction you want to go.
So if we can get a letter of direction from the county, then that helps us out a lot. If that's the direction that comes from the county.
We can do that.
We can do that, basically, saying you'll agree to change it. You've got so many names out there, I can't. Change it to whatever.
Pack Bridge
Pack
Lane.
Bridge all the way through.
If that direction comes from the county, we can send that to those property owners. That works.
Perfect.
Okay, all right.
You can do that, Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate your time today.
all right, thanks.
Thanks, Clint.
We do have some people on for that
Right.
out there at my place too.
Okay, let's do these zoning, I'm assuming you're here for the zoning hearings. Let's take care, let's see which way we have them. First one is Terry Coster.
Okay.
Is that, I can explain that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
This is Austin Black, Bonneville County Building and Zoning. Commissioners, this is a zoning map amendment for a parcel of land from agriculture A1 to C2 general commercial. The request was being made by Connect Engineering on behalf of Terry Coster. The property is located north of 81st North, east of US Highway 20, and west of 35th East or North Yellowstone Highway, Bonneville County, Idaho. The Planning and Zoning Board heard this matter on January 27th, 2021, and unanimously recommended approval of the amendment request. The property is currently zoned A1. The parcel is about 8 acres in size. It's currently designated as a rural center and mixed use on the comprehensive plan of Bonneville County. Comprehensive plan has identified this land for potential commercial use as it has been designated as a rural center and mixed use. It is immediately adjacent to other commercially zoned properties. There's a few unique things about this one. I'm just going to go over those. So number 10 under findings, there are properties in the area which could be impacted by a commercial use, specifically the property located to the west at 2705 East 81st North, Idaho Falls, Idaho 83401. The major function of which is residential use. It is currently agriculturally zoned. If the rezone is approved, The stated property will become completely surrounded by C2 general commercial zoning. The applicant testified that he contacted the property owners, they understood the potential impact and were not opposed to the rezone. We have normal buffering requirements, plating requirements, fire requirements that are included when you go to a C2 zone. And then we'll just go over G in the decisions. It should be noted that Robert and Darcy Perry, property owners at 2705 East 81st North, Idaho Falls, Idaho 83401, which are most affected by the rezone, received a certified notice for each public hearing and did not attend or provide testimony for either hearing. It also should be noted that if the applicant in fact misrepresented the position of the property owners in stating they had no concern with the rezone or the potential impact on their property, then the property owners have the right within 28 days to appeal this decision. So given those facts, it is the decision of the Board of County Commissioners that the request for amendment of the zoning ordinance from A1 agriculture to C2 general commercial be approved. Any questions?
And that includes all the requirements that they would have to have for central
Water, central sewer.
water.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's all in there.
Any questions?
No questions. Okay, have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the findings of facts.
Okay, I'll second that. I guess we're both in favor.
Here's a copy to sign there.
I've got the clean, I've got one to sign.
Okay, that's fine too. We can do that.
Okay. Okay, let's see, the next one is, oh, double L, is that the second one we have?
I can do that. As well.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull this one up on the screen just because I think we have some people online too. Share this here. We'll just go through a few things on this.
Question, let's see, that last one was the McDonald, right?
Last one was, yeah, so there's.
You just did Costa.
Oh, we did.
Completed that. You haven't done McDonald yet.
Okay, do we see McDonald's this one? Okay, we did receive some written testimony afterwards. We'll address that when we get to that one. Let's see, we've got McDonald. Let's just do that now, since that's,
The written testimonies on McDonald's.
okay.
I guess they're gonna do McDonald's, we'll do the-
Okay, so let's do the application of Scott and Terry McDonald. We did receive some correspondence after the hearing was closed saying that the microphone wasn't working and they couldn't testify. Unfortunately, that's the time for the hearing. We can't accept any additional documentation after the hearing is closed. They will also, have the option to, I think, depending on what we decide, if they decide to appeal the way Austin explained it. So go ahead and go through this with us.
All right, this is an application by Scott and Carrie McDonald for a zoning map from A1 to RA2 for a parcel of land located on the west side of 55th West and south of Cary Vista Drive. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on January 27th, 2021, and a subsequent hearing with the Bonneville County Commissioners on February 22nd, 2021. The land use designation is rural residential. The approval of this amendment would be conditioned upon the following. This is in section F of the finding that street lighting will be provided, adequate paving will be installed to meet the requirement of the county, that adequate plans be made to provide a viable system for potable water, irrigation and fire flow will be installed within the development if lot sizes and or numbers of lots trigger some or all of these requirements. that a sewer plan be submitted that will comply with the health regulations. 5, provide for future extension of the county road system network. That there will be no direct access from lots onto 55th West. The developer shall be mindful of the subsoils with all of the development. The developer must submit and have approved a subdivision plat prior to construction to verify compliance with the requirements as specified in this decision, and a comprehensive plan states that all platted uses shall provide effective landscape buffer along the arterial, and the buffer would be required just like our on-site improvements, such as roads within a subdivision. And the buffer system would be against 55th West property line, and it's our standard language of requiring the trees staggered, and they can submit for an alternate landscaping plan along 55th West. I would like to add about, because I'd like to address that the email that we did receive because of the technical issues. I do have a section in here. Due to technical issues during the recording of the public hearing on the 22nd, we were including the written testimony of the adjoining neighbor as part of the record. The written testimony states the development of the property will need to be handled carefully because of the rock outcrop or.
Let me stop you right there, because basically to take additional testimony after the hearing's been closed, we have to go back and publish and reopen that.
Well,
So, yeah,
this is what I discussed,
right, so
and so that's where we wanted to, rather than
you
having to,
discussed where,
with Steve.
okay. Technically, we can't take additional hearing, so I think if we, follow the rest of them, I'm okay with, but to include that, I think would be an error on our part.
Okay.
So if we could, in the proposal,
Do you want 11 deleted?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking for to delete 11.
Would you like to have in condition F with 7, where I have the developer shall be mindful of the subsoils with all development? Do you want that retained,
No,
or
because I think
take that out?
that's guidance with this general, not
Okay.
related to this in particular. Because I think that was kind of explained during the hearing, and so that's appropriate, but to take an additional piece of testimony afterwards, no problem. So, with that, have any questions?
No.
Okay, so your motion would be,
To approve and sign as
minus
stated with the deletion of number 11.
11, and this email will not be part of the record.
Okay.
So, okay, second that, all in favor?
Aye.
So if you want to clean that up and give us a copy of that.
Yep.
Okay, next one is application for appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the request by Double L Enterprises Land and Excavating for a use hearing to allow gravel pit on an agriculture A1 located on the east side of 25th East between 65th South, 81st South. So I think this is Austin.
Yeah.
Put these proposals together.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share the screen here, just for those that are online. So the Planning and Zoning Board first heard this matter on June 3rd, 2020, and the applicant was denied as a result of not having a completed study showing the impact of the flood zone. After a flood study was submitted, the Planning and Zoning Commission again heard this matter on December 9th, 2020, recommended approval of the gravel pit request, and the vote was 4-3. County Commissioners heard this matter on January 25th, 2020. So we'll just kind of briefly go through the findings at the beginning and then spend more time in the conclusion. So the property is shown as A1. The parcel is about 75 acres. It's currently designated as urban residential area on the comprehensive plan. The parcel has been used for agricultural purposes for a long period of time and has no limitations as to continued agricultural use. The property has no historic use as a gravel pit. 7 and 8 briefly just touch on what's in the surrounding area, and 8 touches on the fact that it was in the flood zone. I'll read through that one. Just according to the flood insurance rate map, which was revised April 2nd, 2002, the property is within the floodplain. The map notes the property is affected by the following flood zones: AO depth 1, AO depth 2 feet, AO depth 3 feet, and shaded X areas of less than 1 foot depth. Also, after review of the Sand Creek watershed report, which was prepared by the USDA Soil Conservation Service, it was indicated that this property and surrounding area was flooded by the Sand Creek front watershed and not by water from the Willow Creek runoff. 9, the property is surrounded by A1 zone property on all sides. So now as we go through the decisions or the conclusions, I'm just going to read through those. A, the Rowdy Gravel LLC finding of fact from January 29th, 2009, which was referenced in public testimony, states each application for a gravel pit must be evaluated under its own merit and specific circumstances to determine its general compliance with ordinance standards and how it fits into the fabric of local community and the county as a whole. It must be understood that the standards for approving a new pit in a new area is very different than approving an expansion of an old pit or the approval of a new pit that is adjacent to an existing pit. These same standards apply today. B, the applicant's land is currently agriculturally zoned and can be appropriately considered for use as a source of gravel and conditionally approved as an allowed use within this zone. However, in that this would be a new pit being opened and not an expansion of a pit, nor being adjacent, touching an existing parcel with a pit on it, additional evaluation is needed. The new pit will create impacts on adjacent farming operations and uses not previously established by an existing operation. These impacts must be considered in the hearing process. It is the opinion of the board that the new pit could have an impact on existing agricultural and other uses and must be considered as a factor in this request. C, the planning board noted that the applicant would not be applying for another gravel pit unless there was a need for more gravel to be able to continue to provide service to the public. However, it is the opinion of the board that the applicant failed to provide adequate information showing the need for additional gravel countywide. And that this is a new pit, special consideration is needed to determine its effect on the existing uses within the area. Had this proposal been adjacent to an existing pit, the new impacts would not be as significant a factor in that the adjacent lands would have already been accustomed to gravel pit operation. Attention must be given to the neighborhood and weight given to the specific site and its unique conditions when evaluated. A significant amount of testimony was received in the hearing regarding the poor condition of the county road 25th East. This parcel is less than 3/4 of a mile away from the Sand Creek Golf Course, the Bonneville County 4-H grounds, and Sandy Downs Arena, and would, in the board's opinion, create an undesirable impact. The closer gravel operations get to impact areas between the county and city, and identified urban residential areas must also be given some weight when considering the location of a new source. In this case, the property falls in an identified urban residential area, and the city of Ammon impact area is less than half a mile away. Said impact area is also currently under review for expansion. There is an impact when any new use is located in an agricultural area. No matter what the use is, be it a house, a golf course, a church, or a gravel pit, those impacts must be considered on a case-by-case basis, and they must be weighted into the evaluation process. The applicant's proposal as presented, however, is found to have potential impacts to and compatibility problems with the existing land uses in the area based at this time based on the testimony received. E goes through the same flood criteria at the beginning. The applicant completed and submitted a flood study as part of their application. However, upon review of the study, the Bonneville County Flood Administrator indicated that breach water was not recognized in the study, and the submitted flood study was inadequate in creating a zero rise on the west end of the property. Additional film and photos of the 1962 flood were submitted that indicate a substantial amount of water on the property during the 1962 flood. Testimony was also received from Robert Hoff, who was a personal witness to the 1962 flood, stating that the water in the area was significant. It must also be noted that several property owners within the area have filed LOMAR F, letter of map revision based on fill with FEMA to remove their property from the special flood hazard area as identified by FEMA. It is the opinion of the flood administrator, and the board agrees that the flood study submitted is inadequate in showing surrounding property owners will not be adversely affected. Even though the land zone is A1, the urban residential designation of the comprehensive plan must govern when determining compatibility of the request. Goals in the urban residential zone are to create and maintain residential living areas which are safe, convenient, and attractive, and give personal satisfaction to the residents, and dealing with various and changing residential conditions, and for creating more livable areas for the residents of Bonneville County. The goals also state that the zone should allow for the use of housing types ranging from single-family homes and manufactured homes to multifamily apartments, and providing for variation in the design of these areas and their related facilities. In fact, urban residential areas are considered major residential areas and would not be compatible for gravel pit operations. It is noted that the applicant does meet several of these standards in the use hearing criteria. After having reviewed the area, the closest commercial gravel pit is 3.9 miles to the northwest. So for the decision, based on the above facts, it is the decision of the Board of County Commissioners the request for a gravel pit in A1 zone be denied. Any questions?
Addressed all of the concerns I gave you. I don't know what you gave me. Did I address those?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I very well written. I support it and move that we accept the findings, sign as is,
To deny.
to deny.
Okay. I second that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We will have a signed copy of this available for anybody that wants it. Please avoid talking or contacting the county commissioners, because there is a 28-day right of appeal to the district court by the applicant if they so desire. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next,
We do it now.
the canal.
Yeah, we've got some people on that were interested in the Great Western Canal.
Okay. Lance or Shane, Great Western Canal issue. I know Bryon went out there and met with some concerned landowners about the plan.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Yesterday morning after we had met, there was some investigation done by Pete Demetropoulos, the inspector, on site. And so really in summary of what he had found out is that, that the decision of what to do with that would be, up to Lance and Matt Coster with LTAC. So Lance this morning, I believe, was trying to get into to Matt to discuss this further. So I'll have to turn it over to him because I wasn't involved in that discussion this morning. So, but Lance was up to speed about everything we talked about yesterday in the field. So
I did talk with Matt Coster and Kevin Mertens with Keller Associates this morning, and we talked about different scenarios and different cases and things. I've shared a screen that basically shows the area, I think, in which we're talking about. Let me zoom in on it a little bit. So it seems to be the bridge is just right here, and the guardrail comes and dead ends right here. In the design of the plans for this bridge replacement, ITD bridge required us, because of site distances and clearances and the speed of the road, to extend the guardrail as far as we did. We tried to shorten it up as much as possible, but this is how long it had to go in order to meet ITD bridge standards. That guardrail is also in front of an overhead power pole. And so because of these things, we, in the design, which was admittedly 3.5 years ago, we tried to minimize the amount of impact that would be on the Jensen property. And in minimizing that impact, it did make it a very small radius points for the canal company to access the canal bank and do the maintenance they require. So all of this was to meet ITD bridge specifications. ITD bridge will not allow a gap in the guardrail. We try to go to if they could have had a gap in the guardrail, we would not have had the gate on the other side. The gate on the other side was the only way we could get ITD bridge to buy off on that close of an access without buying right of way. That gate is, in my opinion, a very spendy solution to what would have been easy if ITD bridge had allowed a gap in the guardrail. They will not.
So Lance, can you go back, to the Jensen property? So I'm not sure I fully understood what you just explained. Is it different than what we talked about, Shane, when we were on the site?
Well, in summary, what Lance is saying is that in his discussions, they will not allow what we discussed in the field yesterday. Is that correct, Lance?
Correct. ITD bridge will not allow a gap in the guardrail.
Well, but do they allow that terminal end to wrap back around and be more compact somewhat?
They probably would allow the guardrail to wrap around and be a little bit more compact. Yes, I think they can probably do that, but that shortens it up maybe 2 or 3 feet is all.
So, as I understand the way Bryon was explaining the issue, that requires you to make the jog out that you normally wouldn't. Why can't you tighten that up and go parallel with guardrail?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Commissioner.
Use your cursor and go along the guardrail. Okay, and the activation follows the.
Here's where the dead ends.
Yeah.
The access in follows the,
So what was discussed in the field, I think, is what you would want to know is that what we discussed yesterday was terminate the end of the curve or the guardrail somewhere in this area and have it curve here. This would be eliminated, and the guardrail from here back would be eliminated also, and this access would come here. The problem with that is what Lance explained this morning is also for the guardrail, this power pole that's there was also considered as a obstacle that necessitated the guardrail as well.
Well,
Per their standards, but that's what we discussed in the field yesterday.
Lance, that is not gonna work because that encroaches outside of county right of way on Mr. Jensen's property. And we never,
So that's why there was a right of entry under this area for the canal company to use this approach to get onto the canal. That's where the signed agreement comes in.
well, why were we never notified before? I mean, we have to acquire right of way and even possibly some
So,
property.
so with a right of entry agreement, that allows the canal company to get over that ground to get to the canal to maintain it. That right of entry agreement did that.
Has that been signed?
Yeah, let me bring up
Was that signed by,
property.
was that signed by Mr. Jensen? Was he notified of that?
It was signed by Wayne Jensen on 1/31/2018.
So
Can you
Wayne
see
is
that
one
on the
of,
screen?
no, we don't see it yet.
Okay, let me try to bring it up. So here's the property use agreement that was signed by Wayne Jensen on 1/31/2018. And it talks about this right of entry right through here. And it shows the diagram of how it was going to be constructed.
So we've got Mr. Jensen on the line with us. Wayne, would you like to speak to that? You'll have to unmute your mic.
Yes, I guess I wasn't aware of a signed agreement. What I signed was not what is going on right now. Wasn't what was explained to me. What the engineer explained to me. Can you hear me? Are we okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bob.
What was explained to me 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago, what he showed to me and we walked out and looked at it was completely different than what's going on right now. The question I have is, how are you going to satisfy New Sweden Irrigation? They have a right to come right out on that highway. And no, I didn't, this wasn't what I was aware of when I signed that. That's my signature, yes. But this is the January, 31st of January. And it was, he went through with me and it was not what he was saying. The guardrail's way, way longer than what he told me.
In this that was attached to the signed exhibit, that guardrail goes right out to here. The same exact place as where it's shown on the construction drawings that were bid.
Well, that wasn't what he explained to me. That wasn't what the engineer explained to me.
I'm not sure how to answer that because these exhibits attached to the property use agreement show it just like that.
Well, on that one, can you go right back, go up one more on that picture?
On the picture?
Yeah, okay, right here. That 130-degree turn when you come down along my property and then you turn back onto the Great Western Canal right-of-way, what good is a 130-degree turn? You got a 130-degree turn there, and then to get back out on the road and go east, you got a 180-degree turn. Now, just how is that going to work with equipment?
So the equipment that the canal company will use is probably an excavator or a backhoe, correct?
Trucks, 10-wheeler trucks. Try turning a 10-wheeler truck at 130 degree in that tight a turn.
And I agree, it's gonna be very tough. We tried to minimize that so it would have less impact on your property.
Well, what he explained to me when he walked through is back about up there on the guardrail, see those posts?
Yeah,
He went back about 4 posts and says, this is where we're gonna bring the road out. This is where the guardrail will end, and we'll just cut right straight across to the canal right away. And I says, that will be fine. But this shows it a whole lot more than what I understood.
well, so the engineer was not available on a conference call this morning, the one who designed it. We're gonna try to get a hold of him and discuss some of what our options may be. At this point, though, since this is the signed agreement, this is what I have to go with. I think that there's something we're gonna have to try to figure out how to do something a little bit different than what it is. But I don't have those answers right now.
I asked one question there, and I'm not sure anyone answered. How are you going to satisfy New Sweden Irrigation? Are they going to be okay with this? Because I'm not.
Well, they also signed off on the bridge plans that showed this.
So Lance, does that guardrail actually encroach on the private land then? Does it go?
Guardrail, the guardrail does not. Oh,
Okay.
let me show you this. In February of 2018, the board of directors of the New Sweden Irrigation District signed off on the plans. They had a copy of the plans. So they signed off on what this was at the time.
So
I'll try to get back to let me get back to the screen here.
yeah, because I want to make sure that our guardrail does not go outside of the county right of way.
So here's the right of way line, right here. The guardrail is out here.
I don't understand this curl.
So
Shane, what is that?
the curl,
Yeah, what is this?
so that's the road alignment. That's the access road alignment to get onto the bank of the canal, coming from the county road.
Oh, so here's the canal.
The canal runs along there, yeah? Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so my question, that's kind of what I was referring to early on. Is that something that the canal company, and Mr. Jensen can talk and try to figure out a lesser impact, since if they've already got an access agreement signed for the canal company? You know, if they can find a way to do it with lesser
The
impact.
problem is what Wayne's saying. Here's the normal entrance to the road.
Mhm.
Right here, just a straight shot onto the road. Now the canal company will have to go into his land, come around and then make 130-degree
Yeah,
bend to hit the canal bank. So they're not gonna be able to do that. So basically, they're gonna cut the corner of his field to do that. I mean, they can't make that curve.
no.
So they're gonna end up coming in and just cutting diagonal across this field to.
But Are they planning on the diagonal staying inside of the access agreement? I think that's.
Well, there hasn't been any discussion about modifying that approach up until just now. The main discussion that we've had in the field the last few days and in our offices is to modify the guardrail layout, not necessarily that access road.
And I'm not saying that's what, if you can modify the guard layout, great.
Yeah.
But if not, don't they?
That,
I'm not sure the canal company can go outside of the access agreement that Wayne signed. they're gonna have to make their access fit inside that.
That would have to be an agreement between the
Yeah.
property owner and the canal company at that point.
But I mean, that's the couple options. I think we should still pursue the engineering and see if we can get it changed.
Yeah, I would like to see us work on it and see if something else could be done. I mean, it appears they did sign the agreements to go forward the way it is.
It did, yeah.
But since there was some misunderstanding, I would like to see us do as much as we can to minimize that impact.
I agree.
Okay.
Let me just kind of throw out a possibility. If there was a way to purchase a permanent easement for the canal company to go over Mr. Jensen's property, is that something you're open to, Mr. Jensen?
Oh,
That would have to be between him and the canal company.
no, I wouldn't be agreeable to that. I guess I'm concerned that the state can tell the county or the contractors that they can go out in someone else's property and put in a road.
Well, they did so with that property use agreement that you did sign.
That I realize, and like I said, that wasn't my understanding. I think I was fed some stuff to get me to sign that, and I should have went to a lawyer, I assume. I'm not sure.
Well, I would encourage you that we can follow those two options. You know, if they could find a lesser impact and if they needed to cut the corner, that would be probably an agreement that would have to come between you, Wayne, and the canal company.
How about another gate?
On the guardrail?
Yes.
So to put in the gate at this point in time, I think would be cost prohibitive as well as time prohibitive. We talked about that just briefly, but in order to put in the gate, Matt Coster, Kevin Mertens, and I just thought that it would be so astronomically high that it just doesn't make sense to put in another gate. Beside the fact we don't have the infrastructure, the footings and the stuff that would be necessary for it, and they would impact the new bridge that we have.
Well, I understand that.
Well, I think we've got a couple directions, you know, to see if we can get the state to modify it. Just to modify it, put in another gate, whether they would cover that with the funding or not.
Matt Coster already said they would not cover the cost of another gate.
Do you know, you said cost prohibitive, what would it cost?
We were talking in the order of $150,000 to $200,000.
Well, I know it doesn't sound very palatable, but that could be on the table as an agreement between the irrigation district and Wayne when they talk about that. If they know what the cost would be to do that solution. Anyway.
Is there any possibility that rail could end like we talked yesterday, and put a big curve in there, a buffer, so if anyone hits it, it isn't damaging too bad, one of those big round curves right where it is now, and not put the guardrail in? Is that completely something we can't even think about?
The guardrail was extended the very minimum distance to be able to get approval from ITD Bridge.
Okay, I think we have a better understanding and just continue to explore the different options now that we understand a few things better.
Yeah, I guess I would ask that Shane, you and Lance keep Wayne apprised
We will.
of the progress that you make. I'm afraid we're kind of where we're at. Wayne, you did have some concern about the timeline because they've disconnected the power to your irrigation pump.
Yes.
So do you know what the time frame is to get that power hooked back up? We're going to be irrigating alfalfa here within a month.
So the time frame is to be done by the 1st of April with everything that we can. I know that there is going to be a letter probably being drafted now to the commissioners to send out to Rocky Mountain Power. Rocky Mountain Power has refused to move 2 poles as far as they need to move them. One of which is going to the pumps of Mr. Jensen. So I'm gonna probably try to get that to you as soon as I get a draft copy of it, for you to send a letter to Rocky Mountain Power instructing them they have to move those poles.
We can also follow that up with a phone call to Tim Solomon.
Yeah, it's imperative that we have those poles moved and that power hooked up before irrigation season, or somebody's going to be liable for that crop.
Well, I got 200 acres of tender new seeding alfalfa, and the 1st of April will be none too soon. And it isn't going to happen by the 1st of April that I can see. I would think that should be a top priority. I mean, you're looking at maybe $1,000 a day in loss if that new seeding dies.
There's no way to make it temporary. We'll follow up with Utah Power. Get us that letter as quick as possible, Lance, and we'll make a phone call to Tim today.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
Thanks, gentlemen.
thanks, Wayne. We have a bid,
One bid.
which will open for digital truck scale. Just do that. Total cost proposal of $113,715.13. We could do a conditional approval on this for them to check the specs and then approve it if they meet specs.
Yeah.
So
Is that in line with what you would expect?
We didn't have an engineer's estimate on this.
It was not an engineer design, so we didn't get an engineer's estimate. But it's in line with what we had in the budget to do the project.
I would go ahead and approve it then.
Yeah, I'll second that, so. Okay, what else we got?
Was that a conditional acceptance based on meeting all the specifications?
You know the specs, yes.
Okay. So Mr. Bishop is on the line. He is the one that put in that bid, I believe, so.
Okay.
I will be letting the commissioners know whether it meets all the specs or not, and we'll let you know one way or another.
Okay, what else you got?
Was a couple plats here. We got some plats and development agreements.
We could have done those early, had we known.
Well,
He got here late, so
I got up to the
he
door,
can wait.
I got up to the door and forgot my freaking mask.
You want him up there or?
They're supposed to have some.
Yeah, I don't know why I forget that.
What do you want?
deserve to wait anyway. You don't have anything better to do?
No, I
It's on
don't.
the next page.
Today,
17th.
St. Patrick's Day, huh?
Yes, sir.
Uh-oh, you're not wearing green.
How do you know?
I don't want to imagine.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Well, I had to have some joy today, Kurt, to tease you a little bit.
Well, you got green right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got green in my wallet, not very much of it.
Oh, come on, we know better.
Yeah. That's what my wife keeps saying, that's why I don't have green in my wallet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all have that problem.
The sheriff's coming on tomorrow, isn't he?
No, it's actually today. It was 11, was it 11 o'clock? You mind if I talk to Lance about those power poles? Is that gonna bother you?
No.
Interrupt you? Or Shane, maybe you can tell me. Do you know the situation there with those power poles?
I don't. I didn't even know. I just know that they're having trouble. The contractor's been having trouble to get them to move them.
Do you know why,
Move 'em
Lance?
back.
What's the issue there?
Well, Rocky Mountain Power basically came back and said they're back far enough. We don't need to move them. But according to the clear sight distance that we have, that we need out there, they are about 1.5 feet into that clear sight distance. And so what we have done is we've gone out and we've surveyed the right of way, we've surveyed the clear sight distance, and they took some pictures of where that is. And it clearly shows that the poles need to move back a little bit. And so that is what Kevin Mertens is drafting a letter on today for.
One of them has already been moved with a chainsaw.
I'm gonna go
One of them has been
fast.
cut down and the lines have been temporarily, that was what really concerned Wayne. So, yeah, one of them's already moved because when they put in that rail, they cut it down.
Yeah, there was a total of 3 poles that need to be moved, and there are still 2 that need to be moved.
Okay. Well, all right. We'll call Tim today and get the ball rolling on that because, yeah, that irrigation I would expect could start by the 15th of April if it stays dry.
Yeah.
So, thank you. And yeah, I'm glad you had those signed copies today because that was not clear when I was out there the other day.
Yeah, memory gets a little old sometimes, and it was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Okay, we've got Sam on the line, it looks like.
Reed, I don't know
Yes.
that you can stay on any longer. I'll get back
Okay.
to you whenever. So,
If you have any questions, let me know.
okay.
Thank you.
Lance, I'll get a hold of you because we've got a request for some, I talked to Shane about it, for some historic maps as far back as we have them on the Coster Road. So,
Oh, okay.
You want to get on your own computer?
and I can answer emails and things like that.
Sam, we'll be, going to get on our own computer, so.
Sounds good.
I am pushing hard to do that thing, but I'm a surveyor, I understand, and I'm 100% what you guys are. But engineer,
and when I look at that, although it's really exciting, it's not yours.
Thanks. If I make got a lot of green in my wall.
You can. Have a good day.
He would. He would. And it's not impossible to do that. No. No, it didn't. Yeah.
Thanks, Shane.
You bet. I gotta get you the. What?
Sorry to keep you waiting, Sheriff. Okay, I got the other room turned off so we won't echo as bad.
There you go. How's everybody doing today?
Been one of those days.
Has it?
It has.
It's just continuing?
Well, I hope that you guys are not a continuance of the problems today.
Well, I hope not too. I certainly hope that. So
You never are.
we're just waiting for Roger, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we've been pretty steady out there. He'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Seems like it's almost like one perpetual meeting anymore, isn't it? You just go from one meeting to the next to the next.
Some days. Yep, some days. How are you guys? What are you seeing in your ranks as far as virus?
We're having a little bit of an increase here just in the last few days. So that spike is noticeable. We're seeing it. So
We just got a new confirmed case today, Sheriff. Flamenco went home sick the other day, and he got tested today, and he's positive.
how many days has he been out of the facility?
7.
7?
Yep.
Okay.
There is absolutely a large amount of virus circulating in Bonneville County right now, and it's unique. It's unique to Bonneville County and Jefferson. It's starting to spill into Jefferson, but we're the high spot in the whole state right now, and this is why it's a good idea to get that vaccine as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's so much opinion about that vaccine that just isn't helpful. I think the vaccine for adults that are otherwise pretty healthy, I think there's no question that the vaccine is valuable. It's probably valuable for all of us. I understand some folks with certain autoimmune diseases and stuff. I get being concerned about that, but man, we got to do something to get out of it, get out from under this pandemic. I hate to see a spike like this. It's concerning.
Well, go out and enforce the mask order.
I don't think we have one anymore, do we?
Yeah, no, the health board, they've failed in their duties now.
Well, so's the sheriff, because they could have stopped it earlier if they would have given everybody tickets.
Look at that. The gloves are off.
It's a circular argument that we can go around for another year, and hopefully it's gone by then.
You're
So,
right. You're right.
I would like to address your point, Sheriff. I spoke with actually Dr. Krell yesterday because he was concerned about where the hospital's at right now and what we can do. And I asked him about what the admissions are like now, and he said they're seeing no more admissions from senior citizens living areas. said we're seeing very few from the elderly population now. He said it by all evidence, the vaccine is 100% working.
Yeah.
They're not getting people in that have been vaccinated, but they're getting that 40 to 60-year-old group that has not been vaccinated, and we're being very cautious early, and now have kind of given up and said, oh, well, it's gone, we'll live our lives, and they're becoming infected now, and where they were being careful earlier, and they're seeing them in the hospital.
Commissioner, have you talked to the health board last time you were there about increasing the dosages for our courtroom staff? I emailed them and did not get a response. One of our people that we had infected was actually a bailiff who had contact all upstairs with our court personnel. And I emailed them 2 weeks ago and did not get a response. I noticed that they've now opened it up to, 50 years old on the list. The problem is these guys upstairs are still just setting ducks when we start opening these courtrooms up and having these people walk through. And
so I would be surprised if bailiffs did not fit under the law enforcement category. They should be eligible.
Yeah, they are eligible, but our court clerks, our court judicial secretaries, I don't think he had a vaccine. That was white. And all of our runners and everybody like that I don't know why they wouldn't have just stuck those in with that. If you think about the judicial wheel, we have the cops who were able to get vaccines. You have the jail who was able to get vaccines. You have the prosecutor's office who's getting vaccines.
Just barely, though.
Just barely. But we kind of left out the people who are pushing the records and the paperwork around in these courthouses. And if we open this thing up, it's like you said, if we want the vaccine out there, we're going to be opening the grocery store clerks pretty quick. And we kind of skipped this. So I don't know what poll we got or what we can do, but I've asked and have not received an answer.
So that decision process is solely upon the governor, and he gets his directions from the Vaccine Advisory Committee, the COVID Vaccine Advisory Committee, which is a state committee of health professionals and business professionals that are advising him on who should be eligible. And so it has to go through that group. It cannot be locally. I would encourage you to email that. They've got a contact information in that committee. I would email them. They meet weekly to adjust that.
And he emailed 2 weeks ago. We'll email again. I'll email as well and see if we can get any action there.
Yeah, I know it's frustrating. There's very little we can do there.
Well, the governor released the schedule. It looks like by second week in April, it's going to be open for everybody.
Right, that's good. So we have I think we have a conference call with the governor this Friday, don't we? I just registered for it. I believe it's this Friday, if I wasn't mistaken.
Really, I haven't seen that.
So that came out from IAC. I saw it this morning.
Okay.
I believe her name's Sherry Fernandez put that out from IAC. So that's kicking around, and if I'm thinking correctly, I think it's for this Friday. So.
Okay. What have you got for us?
I'll go ahead and let Pickett start, and he'll update you on the jail.
Right now in the jail, we have 3 positive cases. We did get 1 positive case last night. Have 2 females and a male. Everybody's isolated, so we shouldn't have any spread from that. Do you want to know numbers on IDOC, or are you just looking for COVID stuff?
All of it.
Right now, we're housing 22 IDOC inmates. We have 16 males and 6 females. Our total count for the jail is 204. Just everybody in the state's down. They're moving state inmates out like crazy all across the state. So they closed the Texas. They don't have any prisoners in Texas anymore, and they moved all their IDOC inmates to Arizona. And there is no Colorado contract. So everything that they're housing basically is being local county jails and Arizona. Staff-wise, we have 3 people that are positive that are off work right now. One of them was the bailiff. We have a sergeant, and then we just had a deputy that tested positive last night. The sergeant and the bailiff are married, but they're at the end. They're coming up on the end of their quarantine COVID time, so they should be back to work pretty quick. The one last night, he's going to be out for probably 14 days.
Commissioners, did you have any questions on our death? Carl Pareto was his name. I think I gave you pretty much the information. We're going to do an internal investigation to make sure that we followed everything. We did end up at Dr. Keller's direction, making sure that the inmate's body was going to be autopsied. I believe that's scheduled for Thursday, if I remember correctly. He's technically a state inmate, but that it looks like we followed all of our protocols. We identified, as soon as we identified that he had COVID, we sent him directly to the hospital because we were concerned about his frail state. And obviously, he had a lot of other co-occurring issues that ultimately he didn't last very long with the COVID virus. So basically, we sent him over there on the 11th, and he died on the 14th at Ermac.
Yeah, that was sad. That's too bad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, I really think the jail's done a good job managing through this COVID virus. We're fortunate we haven't had more deaths. So I think they've done an excellent job. But, you know, it's to a degree, I think it was inevitable that we were going to have an inmate pass away from this. But it looks like everything was handled appropriately. We'll cross-check that through an internal investigation process that Lieutenant Houston's going to be handling. But if you have any questions, Pickett may have some additional answers for us, but that's kind of the ground we're standing on that.
No questions. Thanks for having all your ducks in a row and handling it correctly.
You know, one thing I'll bring up, Commissioners, Lieutenant Vita Colonna brought up just a tidbit of information. Carl Prierto's dad was a chaplain in the Navy, and apparently he blessed the Apollo 13 people that landed in the ocean when they got off of when they got on the ship after they got out of the space capsule. His father was the one there blessing the astronauts when they got off their spacecraft.
Wow.
Apparently he had 5 brothers and sisters, and apparently they were transplanted throughout the state through the country. When they all turned 18, they stayed where their father was stationed at the time. So we had a little bit of a hard time contacting all the family members. But they were in Cincinnati, they were in Virginia, and one in Pennsylvania. But that's a pretty neat piece of history for him. So.
Yeah, it was interesting. And the family mentioned that, Carl had unfortunately gotten involved in drug use, and they were sorry to hear about his death, but they had kind of parted ways years ago because of his substance use problem. So, which is what actually had him in jail. So.
Sad life for him.
Yeah, unfortunately. So with that, if you don't have any other questions on the jail, I would just add the IDOC contract. We've continued to bill them at the contract rate, so they're paying for 80 inmates. They have a new person who replaced Tim Higgins. I believe his name is Steve Grill. He's supposed to be calling for us to discuss that contract. I have reached out to the director. I haven't heard back at this point. So we are going to be having discussions with IDOC about whether they're going to honor that contract or where that's going to go. Ultimately, I anticipate the numbers coming back up as we get through the summer months here. IDOC is going to enjoy this low for a while, but it's not going to last. So that's going to come back on them. And I think we'll see our inmate populations increase. There's no question that it's going to impact our dollars, though, especially if we can't get them to agree to hold it at 80. The other piece I wanted to give you was the Ammon contract. We did meet with the city of Ammon, talked about our concerns about the contract numbers needing to adjust, the cost to adjust. They have some specific questions about the Justice Fund. So we're going to be doing some information gathering for them, just specifically what their county taxes pay for. We'll be having some discussions with them. I've already reiterated the discussion that, look, cities are able to police in a way that counties aren't, and we can't balance the needs of the city of Ammon on the backs of county tax solely. So kind of just a re-education about that process. One of the sticklers on that, of course, is I'm going to forget his last name, but Rex, so Rex, who's the councilman that's been out there forever, he's a dentist, local dentist. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. He kind of discusses this every time.
I was just going to say, it's February 2nd again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some of those same comments, the one thing I would tell you, the council in general doesn't hold those same views. So he's kind of a voice out there on his own, but we'll go through this education process with him. They're talking about wanting to just have a percentage of increase every year that we can then look at about every 3 to 5 years and make sure that it's keeping up with where they need to be. Right now, we're dancing around a 4 to a 5% increase for this contract year. The other discussion is whether or not we're going to whittle down that 15% mutual benefit discount that we've been giving them all these years. That was the other factor in discussion. They're willing to work with us, and I think we can move that contract in a positive direction. So I just wanted you to be aware that we are working on that and getting that ready for this upcoming fiscal year. The captain replacement, we've got 3 people that have put in for that. We'll be making our decision on this this week for replacing the jail captain. Covert's last day will be the end of this month, and he doesn't want any kind of a big party, but we're going to put a little gathering together for him, and I'll let you know when that's going to be. And we'll be, of course, asking to present him with his firearm and all of those things. Jeff Edwards, we're going to do his retirement party on the 1st of April. We'll get you the information on that. And of course, we'll try to keep those numbers down and manage it kind of how we did Paul's, with rotating people for his retirement party.
I don't know if there's a specific requirement to keep it to 10 like there was. Just keep the spacing.
Right. I think our obligation right now is no more than 50, but with appropriate social distancing. We'll just we'll keep the spacing and try to manage through that appropriately. Our numbers for March, so we're just comparing half of the month of March this year, half of the month of March last year, for just our calls for service numbers. We're actually down about 200 calls for service so far this month. So right now our numbers are trending down. So I'm interested to see what that looks like as the weather warms and people get out and get busier with their lives. I do think, related to COVID numbers, I think we're just seeing everybody's just trying to go back to business as usual. I'm not seeing much mask wearing out in the community and things like that. And I do think that's directly impacting these COVID numbers. So it'll be interesting to see how long this spike lasts. But that's currently where we're at. James, you have anything? Oh, yeah. We do have a piece, James just reminded me about the school resource officer. We're going to have a discussion with you about looking at adding a school resource officer probably before the next budget year. That was a something that got left out of our discussions last year. They're adding that Black Canyon or middle school, and that's going to be operational by October. So they're asking us for an additional school resource officer to put out there. Obviously, they're still paying 70% of that deputy's time. You know about the issues with that contract. That's under adjustment, and I think Kevin's done a good job there to get that in line. But we do have the need to add another school resource officer in there. So we'll be approaching you with that request, possibly wanting to, I've asked Lieutenant Glenn to work that backwards from the timeline of where they need them to the training pieces and stuff that we have to do with that position, so that we can get that person online in the next school year. So that is an issue for us. Obviously, we understand that that's going to impact that budgeting process for next year, but we would like to get the person started probably sometime this summer, and I'll get you a solid date on what we're looking at there.
We can take a look at it, but I hesitate to keep doing these things in the middle of the year because I know there's going to be a whole list of priorities, and once those commitments are made, we end up pushing off something that you may have considered a higher priority during the budget time.
Sure. No, I agree with that, and it was an error on our part. We should have had that. We should have planned ahead better for this than we did. So we can look at it, let you know what the dates are. We can try to work with the school district to figure it out, understanding that this is a one-off that we don't like to do. But let's see what we can do to address it. I'll get you best information, and then we can make the decision on how we want to address this particular issue. But it is going to be a problem for us as that middle school opens. I guess there's a possibility that we could use other SROs until we could get the budget in place. But we could also look at, do we have some funds available towards the end of the year to allow for that, or what our budgets are looking like as we move into, say, July timelines, something like that.
Sam, I'm unfamiliar with how much time they commit, a school resource officer. Are they 100% in the school, or do they help in any other duties that you have in your office?
So they're pretty much 100% in the school during the school year, but when they're out of school, then we can use them in other areas. So that's 70-30 split with the schools. So in theory, the schools pay 70% of the deputy, and then we pay 30%. The problem is that contract fell behind, and so our deputies are now more expensive than they were. Kevin's worked with the school district to get them up to speed, but they're chewing that a percentage at a time because they had fallen behind with our actual costs. And they're on a road to improvement there. So I would say it's actually more like they're paying 60% and we're paying 40%. Is probably a more accurate representation of that contract right now. So we're trying to get that corrected because the schools just continue to grow, and that's a heavy footprint for us. But if we don't have the school resource officers there, then all those calls that happen, especially the middle schools and the high schools, our patrol group would end up dealing with all those. So
doesn't the contract you have say 70% of actual cost, or?
Well, it did, but the problem was there was a period of years there where that did not get adjusted appropriately to the actual cost. And so the contract was being drawn up at a 70-30 split. By the time we realized what we actually had occurring, we had fallen behind. So Kevin, 2 years ago, began working with the schools to get that contract to accurately reflect. And they have been a good partner there. They're paying that back, but obviously they had to catch up. And I can get you exact breakdowns on that so that you can look at it. I believe, Roger, you were aware of this issue, correct? looks like he had another call occurring there.
Yeah, it was Danny Clark. I'm aware of what issue?
The issue with the school resource officers and that contract and the adjustments that we were making in that, as far as getting them to actually pay 70% of the costs, that there was a differential in there that hadn't been maintained correctly, and we had lost some value in that contract, and Kevin had worked to get that back. You were familiar with that issue, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of along the same lines we're trying to deal with Ammon. You know, getting these up closer to what they're paying for the actual service.
So that's an issue that we had. I would argue is more in those school contracts than it is with Ammon's. Ammon's is that 15 percentile obviously is an impact in there, and I believe as we've grown, that's become more of an issue for us. So yeah, similar in nature, but just different in how we arrive at the problem. So that's kind of where it's at.
The city pulled the resource officers 91, or did they put them back in?
They put them back in. They had pulled them temporarily, but they've got them back in. But they don't have the same footprint that we do, and we also have more schools in 93 than they have in 91, middle schools and high schools.
What agreements do they have with the school district?
You know, I don't have their specific agreements, but I can get those and look at them.
It'd be interesting to see, because I think that's one of the reasons they pulled them. So apparently they got together with the school district and had a more serious talk.
Okay, I'll get a copy of their contracts so we can look at that, see where we're at there.
Okay.
I think that's all we have for you today, unless you have any other questions for us.
No, not right now. Got to deal with a Danny issue. So.
Right, sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, you guys.